here. Let's talk about bubble sort. So bubble sort is one of a plethora of different sorting algorithms in computer science. It's just a way to sort things, and other certain algorithms, sorting algorithms take longer or shorter than others, and bubble sort is a pretty inefficient way to sort. So let's just kind of walk through it. Bubble sort works by comparing and possibly swapping two values in a set. So if you think of an array, compares to if one is greater than the other, you swap them. So the algorithm would start with a variable previous pointing to the first element, 1, and current pointing to the second value, 0. So this is an example. So current 1, or I guess previous is 1, and then current is 0. And then if current is less than 1, you swap them. And you just keep on doing that. You keep looping through until you get an actual sorted array. So here's an example of kind of which one, when they're actually swapping. So always write unit tests, and we'll go through all this. But, all right, so here's an actual visualization of bubble sort kind of slowed down. So you have an array is represented by the lines, and it just keeps looping through, starting from 0, just keeps going through until they're totally sorted. And so you can keep seeing that. Just keeps looping through. And then once it's all sorted, it's kind of done. All right. So first, what I need to do is fork this over to my personal GitHub. So I'm on my Platoons. Got to fork it over to Tom Preet's GitHub, making a copy of it. And now I'm on Tom Preet's bubble sort GitHub. I'm going to git clone it. Come over here in my challenges, git clone, Tom Preet bubble sort. Great. Now I can cd into bubble sort, clear it, and open this bubble sort into the current window. Does anybody, what language do you want me to do this in? Anybody? Matt?
Python.
Oh, Python, okay. All right, let's do it in Python. So right here, we have this, a sequence and number of swaps. Let's see what we can do. So I'm gonna cd Python. And the first thing I wanna do, I'm working on my master branch. I don't wanna be working on my master branch. Let me zoom in a little bit. Oh, it's too much. There we go. So I wanna create a new branch. Git checkout -b instructor solution. There we go. I'm no longer on my master branch. Now I'm on my instructor solution branch. So the first thing, let's do some pseudo coding. All right, my code here. I'm just gonna do like, all right. So let's take a look. If I wanted to sort this, how would I go about doing this? So I've got an array. So first, like, create a method called bubble sort that takes in an array input, or as an argument. All right. So what I want to do is loop through this thing, this array, but I want to continue looping through it multiple times until it's actually sorted. So instead of just like saying like, write, create a for loop and loop through the input array. Like that's what I'm going to have to do. But if I just do that once, it's only going to loop through it once, and it's not going to actually sort everything. Because if I loop through it, I can compare the first one and second one. I can swap those. Then I can compare 4 to 5. That's not swappable. And then I compare like 5 to 0, 0. So essentially, if I loop through this once, what would it look like? So I would swap 3 and 4. It wouldn't swap 5. It'd swap 0 and 5, and then it would swap, I guess, 1 and 5. So that's what it would look like if I only loop through it once. So how can I keep on iterating through, like repeating this, create this for loop multiple times until some condition is met?
Another loop.
Another loop. So I can do a nested loop. But so for this one, I'm going to actually create a while loop. Create a while loop and set it to the length, of the array input array. All right. So we got 2 nested for loops, or 2 nested loops. One's a while loop, and now I created a for loop, and so I'm in this for loop, and I can compare 2 values in this for loop, like I and I plus 1. So if I need to compare them, at what point should I actually swap them? I can say like, if I is greater than I, so if like current index is greater than current index plus 1. So here I can actually like current IDX, current IDX plus 1. So compare current index and the current index plus 1. And if the current index is greater than the current index plus 1, we need to swap these 2 in this array. So how can I do that? So I need to swap them. So I can say like, so I can say the index, or like array at the current index, which is this one, should equal the current index plus 1. But if I do that, then I'm replacing. So for this first example, if I do that, like if I replace the current index, which is 3, or which is 4, with the value at current index plus 1, I would change this value to 3, and now I wouldn't have, and like the current index plus 1 is still 3, so I lost the value of the current index. So 4 is no longer available for me within the context of this method. So what you need to do is create a temporary variable that holds either that holds one of these values temporarily. So create a temp variable, and that and assign it to, it could be this current index, yeah, to current index plus 1, and then set or assign array at index plus 1, so like 3, to equal current index, and then I can say assign array at current index to equal the temp variable. So therefore, if I loop through this first time, the temporary variable would be assigned to 3, and then I'd reassign the array at current index plus 1, which is 3, to equal the current index, which is now 4. Now I can reassign the array at the current index, which is initially 4, to the temporary variable, which is 3. So I can 3 equals 4 now. So that's where it's a swapped. And now, what do we need to do? We have to also keep track of swaps. So then I can just increment swaps plus equals 1. So that this is when I want to actually swap. Swap numbers. And then, so so once that happens, now I can actually decrement this while loop by 1. Because at that point, I've already swapped, I've already looped through it once. So I've made a check once already. Because I need to loop through it as the length of the array. So that's how many times I actually have to loop through it. So decrement while loop and set it to the length. So create a while loop. Not that this whole line doesn't make any sense. So while, so right here, I actually have to like create a counter before, to keep track of the length of the array. So create counter variable and set to length of the array and while loop. While loop is, so while counter is greater than 0, essentially. So now I can actually decrement counter by 1. So if it's continuing to loop through the array, if it finds a value that needs to be swapped, it swaps it, increments the swaps, the number of swaps by 1, and now I can decrement the counter by 1. So then it starts over, the whole while loop starts over. Or the whole for loop essentially starts over. At the very end, it should be sorted by that at that point. Then I can just return the array. Does anybody have any questions about this, the logic of when to swap a number and this little bit of code? So now we actually have to implement this. All right. Oop. So def bubble sort takes in an array. Then I can create a counter, set it to 0. Whoop. Then while counter is greater than 0, I can loop through. So for I in range length of the array, so that's one way we can do a for loop. And so I can say if current index, which is for if let's actually go back. I want to read this some more. So we have a previous index or a previous point and a current point. So let's actually create a couple of more variables to store. So I can say like first element equals array at I, and second element equals array at I plus 1. Now I can actually just compare. So if the first element is greater than the second element, that's when I actually want to swap them. Now I can create a temporary variable, temp, and what am I assigning it to? The current index plus 1, which is the second element, and then reassign the array at the second element to equal the first element. So array second element equals first element. And now I can say array at first element to equal this temporary, which is the same, equals temporary. And now I can increment swaps. So swaps is a global variable. Swaps plus equals 1. And now I can decrement the counter variable by 1. Is it inline? So decrement.
In 24 and 25, will those indices be the I and I plus 1 instead?
Yeah. Should they be? Or are you
like the inside, like you have R and then second element as the index? Would it be the actual like I plus 1 in that case?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yep. You are correct. Yep, that would have been bad. Because I was just actually inputting the value, right? Which is not correct. So yeah, thank you for that. That would have been bad. And now I can actually counter minus equals 1. At the very end, I can return the array. See if this works.
Shouldn't it be if first element is greater than second element? Or
Yep.
Oh, never mind. Sorry.
No, yeah, you're right. Yep. That would have been throwing a lot of errors. Thank you for checking. All right. So I'm just going to comment that out and run this and see if we actually get. So I'm going to print bubble sort, pass in the sequence. Let's see if something happens. Might get an error. Python bubble sort. Ooh, that did not look good. Counter minus equals 1.
Your while loop is not going to run.
Oh, thank you. See, there we go. So if I actually followed my pseudo code, I can say set it to the length of the input array. Now let's try that. Uh-oh. Unbound local error, local variable swaps, reference before assignment. Why is that? So swaps is outside of bubble sort. Does anybody know how we can create swaps, like access swaps within the bubble sort array? Because right
You
here,
can type global before it, right?
yep, so I can actually make swaps a global variable. Can I do it just here? Or can I, let's just try it here. So swaps, invalid syntax. So, or did you mean put global up here? Is that Heather?
Yeah, no, I think right after you define the loop, you would put the global swaps, and then you would call it later, I think.
Yeah, I should be able to put swaps. Let's see this. Uh-oh, second element, list index out of range and bubble sort. Line 22. Oh. So,
Hey, Tom.
yep,
I think on the README, it's like after first iteration, if there is swapping, it stops and start all over again. You know what I mean? Can you see on the example? Yeah.
so swaps.
And can you see the second iteration? It's like, again, 3 and 4. So after first swapping, it stops and start all over again.
Is it in here? Are you talking about?
Yeah. So the
So-
first iteration, it's 4, 3, and
Yep.
there's swapping, yes.
Oh, yeah, and
and
it
the second
stops.
iteration, it stops the iteration and
doesn't go
starts
all the way
all over
through.
again.
Okay. Let's just see if this works. And then we can we'll try to address that. Because if we can actually return something that would stop that. So if,
For that one, shouldn't it be length of array -1 so that I plus 1 doesn't leave?
yep. So we can do that. Let's see if this works. 1, 0, 1, 3, 4, 5. So that works. So we were able to get it to work. Let's see if swaps. So we have 7 times. So cool. Now, so if swaps, let's see. So we can actually just print the array to see if it actually, where would we print the array? So print array, just do index. So 3, 4. Yeah, it does stop in this one. Huh. Is it supposed to stop? I don't even know.
I think on release 1, it stops, and on release 2, it goes the full collection each time.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I see. To get the result, can we tweak the algorithm? So this would be release 2. We can even break this down even further. Instead of, so yeah, this is the optimal bubble sort solution. As far as it not breaking every time it makes a swap. But we can also, technically we can break this off into its own method called like swap. If you wanted to continue to break it down into, you know, single responsibility type code. So if we wanted to break this into its own piece of code or its own method, you can do like def swap, takes in the array, takes in, what is it, like IDX1, ID index 2, and pretty much do this exactly same thing. I just want to see if this works. And then array. Then index 2. Whoop. I'm going to print, you know, now instead of here, we can call swapped, pass in the array, and then the index, whoop, I and I plus 1. So yeah. So now we kind of, it's a little more tight, a little more single responsibility, our code. What questions do you have about what I, like the pseudocode and the solution? Does anybody have any questions?
For these like sorting and search algorithms, are we just are we going over like all of them just to know like what they are, and then like at the end we'll know like, oh, this is the best one to use for like certain situations, or is it just kind of like informational stuff?
Yeah, no, we're not going to be going over any other sorting algorithms. But like if you want, you can like look them up and see how like other optimal ways to sort them.
The CS50, the Harvard CS50 class has a whole one of the weeks is about sorting, and they go through each of the primary search algorithms and kind of talks about their advantages and disadvantages and stuff.
Yeah,
if you are interested.
All right. Nobody has any more questions. I'm gonna get push this up to GitHub. So ls. So if I do git add everything, git status, bubble sort py, so I can git commit instructor solution, git push origin instructor solution branch. There we go. So if I go up here, I can say instructor solution had recent pushes less than a minute ago, compare and pull. It's going to go over to Mike Platoon now. So Mike Platoon's bubble sort, the base repository, I'm requesting to pull the instructor solution from Tom Preet's GitHub. So you can create a pull request. And there we go.